Morning, get ready. It's kind of calm, so I can actually do a sort of a little rollout throughout the day, possibly. I'm going to go teach right now. I'm going out of town to teach Acts 21, which those go up about a week later. I just posted a teaching post. Look, all of those links that I add on those posts, they relate in some way to whatever I taught on that particular video. So those who want to get a little more in-depth, just go to those links. You can copy all those zip drives if you want and have all these studies. And those of you that are teaching scripture, pastors and all, make them, do them, use them if you want. I wanted to do a little update. Maybe I'll talk real quick on some of Acts 21, which I'm going to go teach. It's not a lot of doctrinal stuff. There's some. But what you see in Acts 21 is Paul and his brothers that are going on these missionary journeys, which Luke is recording. They're going from place to place, area to area, a bunch of ships. We're going to read it. They go to Troas, which was a great seaport, I think Troas, maybe Tyre, but one of them. Alexander the Great had conquered that seaport a few hundred years before Paul's time. But what you're seeing is people on the move, people on the go. Now, last week I kind of didn't see anybody. Yesterday I saw some of the guys. And I do notice that there are times where I think, if I could just settle down, I would like that. But I notice that that's fine. I'm not able to sit still. But that's okay. You can use all that. Albert Hoffman, some of my friends from here, they want to go with me when I take these trips to New Jersey and then I go to New York City. But when I do those trips, I drive all day. I don't stop. I eat once a day at night. And even when I get there, I'm out all over the place. So I couldn't have some of the guys with me. It would hold me back. Now, Trump he addressed the nation last night. I caught just part of it. I was doing my studying for today. I was teaching, but one of the NBC commentators, the speech, the part I caught seemed fine. It was almost like a call to unity. I know you can have criticisms on it. But the news reported, this was NBC, and it was a black lady, and she said, how could Trump call for unity when he defended the Nazis just last week? He defended those that were among the Nazis. Now, if the average public actually didn't know all of what happened with how he handled some of his discussions and all, you would think, wow, an American president is publicly defending Nazis. And look, I don't defend those. I mentioned yesterday to some of the street friends that were talking about the Confederate statues and all. I said they just arrested someone in Houston Park, it was said, I'm assuming Houston, for planting explosives at a Confederate statue or whatever. I don't defend any of the things that happen in our history, and I understand the argument against obviously the Confederate flag and all. I'm not a Confederate flag defender. But when Trump made his little, not defense, in some of the planned protests that go on in this country, there were times, and there are times where people actually got hired to go and do violence from the liberal side, okay? You don't see a lot of media on that, but there were times where people were hired and they were told, go throw the first punch. I'm not sure if these things happened recently, but there was some video, even in the recent one, where you saw the the alt-left actually assaulting some people. And this has happened in the past. Now look, I was going to mention about our naval vessel that was hit about 2 months ago. And it was hit broadsided. I mean, the merchant ship that hit our naval vessel hit it on the side, okay? they didn't collide like two ships colliding side by side. The merchant vessels hit that Navy ship. This was the one about 2 months ago, and rammed into the side. Now, even our military people have a lot of questions how that could happen, because we have a lot of radar and all that. If anything's approaching our military ships, alarms go off and so forth. And then the other night, they said on the news, they reported, and it was very deceiving. They said the official investigation report came out. But what it said was, it was the official investigation report on what happened structurally. Meaning they just did an investigation that said, after it was hit, these cabins flooded, this is what happened, and some of our sailors died. But they didn't report why, how. And I was going to mention that, and then another Navy vessel was hit that same next day, which is two. I think there were four throughout this last year, but two. And this was a merchant ship from Singapore. And once again, these are not colliding, and they're reporting it as colliding. But the merchant ships are hitting our ships right on the side and putting big holes, and we had some more sailors die. And I remember they criticized Trump, but they said one of his responses was, "That's too bad." Not like he was being flippant about it, but that he was wondering. Now, in all the conspiracies that people, many years ago, and this was on one of my trips, one of my, being on the move. And I remember I was going up to New Jersey, whether I flew or drove, but the news before I left was the airline union mechanics for a particular airline, forget which one it was, but they were in contract dispute with the airline, with the owners, right? And then it was reported they were kind of laid off the union mechanics, and they had some other mechanics, sort of like what Reagan did when he fired all the air traffic controllers many, many years ago. Well, during this dispute where the mechanics of the union were now in a dispute, the news reported there was a plane. It didn't crash, but there were chairs on the plane, like the chairs you sit in, and a whole row of them, whoever was sitting on that row of chairs, the whole row of those seats just came loose. Those seats were loose. And then it was reported they investigated all of the little nuts and bolts that hold the seats structurally to the floor of the plane were taken off, removed. Now, when that first came out, I thought, this was many years ago, I thought, somebody that had access not to cause a plane to crash, but somebody that was mad because these negotiations were going on, you threaten people's livelihood. Somebody had taken off figuring they're going to, fire us union mechanics that take care of the planes, and then they'll do that. And then when the other ones come in, the non-union guys, for that period of time, it'd make them look bad because seats fell off. Now, there were a few seats, and all of the nuts and bolts were removed. Now, I knew that's what happened. But look, you don't want the public to know something like that. And then when I was in New Jersey on that particular trip, the media reported they solved it. Here's for the public. This is how it was solved. And the mainstream media, which I don't think they were lying, but whoever, quote, did the investigation said the reason that happened was soda had spilt over long periods of years. People had spilled soda on the seats, and the cokes and all seeped down into the nuts and bolts, and that was the final resolution, which absolutely could not have been true, because there was a particular row of seats, every nut, every bolt, but yet soda randomly spilled over periods of years, which I'm sure happens, but the soda just worked on all the nuts and bolts in those two rows or whatever of seats. But yet it calmed the public because they didn't want the public to know we got such a dispute that somebody went in out of anger, retaliation. Why would I mention that with the second naval ship and Trump's response? That's too bad. It's always possible. Any military person that's looking at that, look, the head of the naval fleet suspended every single operation like for one day. It's always possible that people might say something like, not that the captain of the vessel decided let us get rammed, but maybe people that should have been saying, look, we got a radar, sonar, or whatever going off, and there's a vessel approaching us, because it does create a sense of crisis in the presidency and in the nation if you have multiple incidents that make the man in charge look bad. And so I just wanted to comment because, like I said, it was strange the way some of those things happened. I'll be going now. I'll be on the move. When I teach, when Acts 21 does come up, that's the dynamic I wanted you to see. The last, I might wind up doing a few more of these today. There's a street in San Antonio, I'm not going to say, but when I make those rides, I got off, and it would probably be an area, it's close to downtown, but it would probably be an area it looks like some of the spots where I work with my friends. And back in the day, some neighborhoods that look, maybe there's some crime in the past, the history. But when I went down that street, I said, man, I feel like I'm at home here. Because there's a lot of, maybe people would refer to it as lower class neighborhood or whatever. We are, as God's people, we're carrying a message. The great Apostle Paul, he was writing these letters, which I'll talk about later today on the teaching, Galatians and all. But there was a momentum that this came out of, okay? And when we make attempts maybe to sit in ivory towers or saying, I'm just going to speak, but I'm not going to be active, I'm not going to engage. Part of the dynamic of effective communication is actually being a part of the journey. Moving, being on the move, okay? So it's very quiet here. And I'll be heading out. This is a good prayer spot. I have a homeless friend that I talked to him last week. He camps right down there. It's a nice spot. My friend, I saw Levi yesterday, and Levi and a few of my friends, they stay on one of the little prayer islands over there. And I told Levi when I was talking to him yesterday, I know where my friends stay. I said, I put that little cross up. It's out there. You wouldn't be able to see it from the video. But just one day I was doing a prayer walk, and I found a 2x4 and another one. And I said, well, if I find a string, I'll put that cross up real quick. But it's big enough you see it from the highway. And I've mentioned it before. Sometimes the cross is taken down. The guys put it back up. I said, oh, you must have saw my cross, Levi. He said, did you see, John, how I decorated it? And I just looked now, because he told me that yesterday. And he put some, stuff on it and kind of fixed it up. I'll share a little bit more of some of the interactions. So I like that, okay? So let's begin the day. Let's pray if this becomes a rollout day. I wanted just to mention that. I felt the speech, the parts I saw were good. I understand people are upset about many things in the country. But even on that, she was a nice black news lady commenting on NBC after the speech. I quoted on NBC. But they should have corrected it and said, well, Trump wasn't defending those that were among Nazis. I understood what he meant, what I explained. There have been protests where those who have real anger on both sides, but there have been times where the alt-left were actually told, go and start an altercation and it'll get a lot of media coverage. whether that happened on this specific one, the most recent one. So what that says is, if you're trying to work for unity and peace, and you're trying to engage, which the president spoke about, if things like that do happen, then you explain that was wrong on both sides. Any violence is wrong on both sides. If I disagree with you, and I am not a Confederate flag defender, but if I disagree with you on whether or not we should have particular statues or whatever, I understand that argument. But don't lie, don't deceive, because there are things that are problematic right now. I bless all you guys. Just started with this first rollout for the day. God bless everybody.